Welcome to Energy Matters, presented by New Jersey Policy Institute. I'm your host, Jeanette Hoffman. Thanks for joining us. Energy affordability is back in the spotlight, with a new poll revealing over 80% of New Jersey voters think their electric bills are too high. Mike DuHaime, president of MAG Global Strategy, breaks down those numbers for us and tells us what it might mean for this year's gubernatorial race. Christina Renna, president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce Southern New Jersey, talks to us about the state's energy landscape for South Jersey employers. And Cape May County Commissioner Melanie Collette, policy analyst for CFACT, fills us in about how rate hikes are impacting Cape May businesses and families. But first, Assemblyman Wayne Deangelo, chairman of the Assembly Telecommunications and Utilities Committee, joins us to talk about energy infrastructure, affordability, and jobs. Chairman, thanks for joining us. When it comes to energy policy, there's so much to talk about, so let's get right into it. In your position as chairman of the Assembly Telecommunications and Utilities Committee, you've supported expanding clean energy in New Jersey, but you've also called for practicality and affordability. What does a balanced approach to energy policy look like to you?
Difficult question, difficult answer. Wish it was very simple, but it's not. So what I mean by diversity in our energy generation is I want to ensure that all of our eggs are not in one basket. Currently in New Jersey, we import about 30%, 35% of our energy from the grid, right? From the other 12 states that are in our 13-state grid. Currently, half of our energy that we generate comes from natural gas. About 40% comes from the 3 nuclear reactors that are down in South Jersey. And about 10% is from renewable energy, whether it's battery storage, whether it's hydro, whether it's solar panels. I want to see an expansion and a strong growth in our renewable energy portfolio. It's not balanced. We're lacking in that. We should be kind of helping our environment by generating green energy, not polluting the air. You can see the strong amount of natural gas that we have, and we need that. Right? We need that for the power that to continue the growth in New Jersey and the jobs that are out there, but we need to expand strongly in the renewable sector.
So to that point, you've said that the current energy master plan doesn't truly take advantage of all the energy sources. So what is missing really, and why does that matter to everyday New Jerseyans, and what should be expanded?
Most recently, the problems that we're seeing with the cost of electric generation. Electric generation equates for about 75% of your electric bill. The other 25% comes in the distribution and transmission lines. Right? What I want to ensure when Governor Murphy and some individuals are pushing for 100% renewable by 2035, I was a little concerned. I want to make sure that we can have the lower cost of natural gas generation so that we're not detrimentally impacting the lives of New Jerseyans, but while also expanding that growth in the renewables, to have a better environment, right? So we need to keep that proper balance. Our grid, just so you know, has a maximum generation capacity of about 185 gigawatts or billion watts. On a really hot day that we've had over the past couple of weeks, we're up towards 160 gigawatts of utilization of the power in that 13-state grid. It's a concern. So the supply and demand factor came into play. I want to make sure that, as we're expanding, that we're being cognizant of the economic impact on New Jerseyans, on the cost of energy, as well as protecting the environment.
And talking about the grid and those hot days and reliability, much of the Northeast, including New Jersey, just experienced a severe heat wave, and many towns saw record-breaking temperatures. So how important is reliability and ensuring that natural gas and the grid is secured and those natural gas power plants are secured during peak demand events like heat waves or cold snaps?
It's extremely important to make sure that our supply of fuels are okay. Things to keep aware of. Like I said, half of the energy that's generated in New Jersey comes from natural gas. 75% of our homes in the wintertime are heated with natural gas, and 65% of our businesses are heated with natural gas. So we have to make sure that all of our transmission lines, whether they're electric distribution lines, transmission lines, gas pipelines, water lines, that our infrastructure is up to speed. We can't expand our electric generation without first having our transmission and distribution lines in place. That's the order that it goes in, not build the powerhouse and then build the lines to come to it. Or we have to make sure we're all squared away before we can expand. We are taking them steps as we are preparing for increasing generation. I've been discussing a 1 to 3, a 3 to 6, and a 6 to 10-year plan that incorporates all avenues of electricity and the generation.
I also want to turn to the topic of labor and workforce development, which is something you're an expert at in your day job as president of the building trades in Mercer and Burlington counties. We've seen a number of big energy projects canceled here in New Jersey over the past several years. Are we risking the loss of well-paying, skilled careers in the trades as a result of some of these delayed or blocked energy projects at existing facilities like pipelines and generation facilities?
Right. I've been aware of that discussion for a number of years now. And I'm trying to make sure that first off, on the new technologies, that all the trades that are part of those generation technology projects are up to speed and trained. Make sure we have a skilled workforce out there. Make sure we're reaching out to the next generation of workforce so that they're properly trained and see an avenue to go forward. Like I have a 1 to 3 year window of utilizing battery storage and solar panels to help increase our generation, as well as other mechanisms that are out there, whether it's hydro or geothermals on generating electricity. I have a discussion on a 3 to 6 year window on bringing back up some of our natural gas generating stations that have been shut down, but only recently. So it takes a few years to get them back online to start generating electricity. And then the longer term on the 6 to 10 year plan on bringing nuclear back to New Jersey. We have the 3 reactors down south. We have potential to add a 4th reactor down south, or our vacated Oyster Creek, which used to generate 675 megawatts, has been decommissioned back under Governor Christie. We want to make sure that the opportunities that the transmission lines are already there. So adding small modular nuclear reactors, looking at that technology coming to New Jersey, as the next wave of nuclear reactors in New Jersey.
Well, these projects will certainly be critical moving forward, but building trades have also supported innovations like carbon capture, hydrogen, and other innovations that work with our existing facilities. Should we be considering these as options also in New Jersey?
We are considering them as options. It is part of our diversity in our generation portfolio. One of the other things we're looking at, and again, it's not just on generation. That's what you've been hearing mainly just on generation. We need to strongly look at using less of our resources, more energy efficiency programs, whether we're changing out our air conditioning units, whether heating units, whatever lighting systems. So using less power is very important. That should be equally as important as we're going forward as in our discussions, and that's training a workforce to do those energy efficiency programs.
Well, thank you, Chairman. When it comes to clean energy and affordability, you have stressed that this is not an either or debate. We really appreciate your conversation, and we look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
My next guest is Mike DuHaime, a top political strategist and president of MAD Global Strategy, a national public affairs firm. His firm recently conducted a poll on energy policy, commissioned by Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future. He's here to break down the results for us. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeanette. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So first, just tell us a little bit about the organization Natural Allies.
Sure. It's a group of organizations, basically labor unions, energy companies, National Association of Manufacturers, others who are energy users who are trying to bring some common sense to the discussion around energy to really make sure that we are working together across all forms of energy to provide affordable and reliable energy while also making sure we do continue to lower emissions and provide for cleaner energy going forward, but to do so in a way that's sensible as opposed to some of the extremes we hear from maybe the far left or the far right.
Well, it seems like we need some common sense right now because your poll showed an overwhelming 80% of New Jersey voters think their electric bills are too high. Now, I'm kind of wondering what the other 20% are thinking. But in an election year, how do you think this issue is shaping the conversation around energy policy and affordability in New Jersey?
Well, I think you just used the right term, Jeanette, affordability. You would often think people say energy prices are too high, but I've been polling in New Jersey for more than 15 years, and I've never seen that number so high on energy. Normally, it's about half that. Most people have thought that energy prices are about right in New Jersey over time. But over the last 8 years or so, we've moved to policies that have really constricted supply. And as demand continues to go up, it's kind of a natural law of economics that prices are going up. We've seen affordability dominate national politics, certainly in the last 7 or 8 years. And it was a big issue 4 years ago, and I anticipate it being a big issue again this fall.
And so to that point, your survey found that voters overwhelmingly support an all of the above energy strategy, including natural gas and renewables. Do you think our current New Jersey energy policies reflect that balance, or is there a disconnect with public sentiment?
Well, it really has not reflected that, Jeanette. I think most of the policies over the last 7 or 8 years have been something that have tried too far to push for renewables at the expense of some of the reliability side of that. What I mean is we've taken away some generation before that generation was replaced. And while the intentions were noble around offshore wind and solar and other pieces, they just haven't come online quickly enough. And so the issue is that we've lost some supply as demand continues to rise, as we have more electric vehicles and more people have phones to power and air conditioning needs. This is something that has been a bit of an issue. And we found that by more than 2-to-1 margin, people would favor a candidate this year that would favor more of an all of the above approach, as opposed to one that would further Governor Murphy's kind of zero carbon goals. Again, people don't think that those goals are wrong. They just don't believe that they're achievable right now in a way that's affordable and reliable. So they want something where we're looking at, yes, we want renewables, we want lower emissions, but people really understand that natural gas is the way that we can provide that affordability and reliability. And we found that that's across party lines. Natural gas is very popular with Republicans, but it's also very popular with Democrats and independents as well. It's a 5-to-1 popular ratio among independents, and it's more than 2-to-1 among Democrats. And this is something that maybe the far left has pushed too hard on that, and that's been very difficult for some more centrist Democratic elected officials. But by and large, Democrats, Republicans, and independents agree that natural gas is a really smart way to go forward, because it does provide a base load generation. It does provide that reliable force, but also doing so in an affordable way. And frankly, they know that's why it's much cleaner. The reason emissions have gone down over the last 25 years in this country are mostly because natural gas has replaced coal in many parts of the country's generation, as renewables start to ramp up.
Yeah, and so let's talk about independent voters. You've run presidential campaigns, you've run gubernatorial campaigns. You know what a key voting bloc they are. Nearly 70% of independent voters favor candidates who support expanding natural gas in the energy mix. So what does that tell us about how swing voters view energy policy? And how is that going to influence campaign messaging this year in the gubernatorial campaign?
Swing voters and independent voters don't view energy necessarily politically. A lot of folks in the state house do, and a lot of maybe extremes do it. But most voters, they want, when they flip the switch, they want the lights to go on. When it's cold, they want the heat to go on. When it's warm, they want the air conditioning to go on, and they want all that to happen at as low a price as possible. And if the power goes out in a storm, they want it to come back on quickly. That's it. It's not political. Mayor LaGuardia in New York used to say there's no Republican or Democratic way to pick up the garbage. Well, that's how many voters view energy. They just want reliable, affordable energy. Yes, they want emissions to go down, but they don't want it to become this political football. This is a very pragmatic issue to most voters, and they expect their leaders to behave that way as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you measure the most popular energy sources in your poll, and solar and natural gas came out as the most popular. Why do you think these sources are the most appealing? It was, again, reliability and affordability?
Yeah, I think reliability and affordability is the biggest part in terms of natural gas, but people understand also that it really is clean burning and it is much lower emission. 20 years ago, we had many coal burning plants in New Jersey and throughout the Northeast. Now there's only one coal burning plant left in the 8 states between New England and New York and New Jersey, and our emissions have gone down dramatically, and that's because of natural gas. Even though we've had one of our 4 nuclear plants go offline over the last few years in New Jersey, emissions continue to go in the right direction because of natural gas. Solar was very popular in New Jersey 10 years ago. Ironically, under a Republican governor, New Jersey was third in the country in solar, behind only Arizona and California. We've dropped now into the 30s. So I think voters understand that solar is good and smart. But for some reason in New Jersey, because of our approach, that's really dropped as well. And then offshore wind, I think people understand there's some thoughts about why that would be good. That's the one that's become a little bit more polarized politically over time. Again, people like the idea of renewables, but they also understand they're not there yet to do everything. So they understand that natural gas is a way to provide that reliable and affordable baseload while renewables continue to scale up.
Yeah, and speaking of affordability, a recent study by the Progressive Policy Institute highlighted that low-income communities are the most at risk in an energy transition without natural gas due to higher prices. So with 84% of voters ranking affordability as the top priority, far ahead of climate change, how would you advise candidates or policymakers to balance environmental goals with economic concerns in a way that resonates with the electorate?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the tough job of being an elected official. How do you balance these different needs? But one of the board members of Natural Allies for Clean Energy Future is the former mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, and he's a Democrat, but he's part of this group. And he said Democrats really need to get back to the kitchen table issues of affordability and reliability, and striking that balance. It's not an either or proposition, and too many in politics, with whether it's energy or other issues, provide these binary choices, either or. That's not the case with energy. We can continue to move in the right direction in terms of investing in renewables and such, while at the same time making sure we have affordable and reliable energy. And that really comes from natural gas. So striking that balance, and as natural gas continues to help lower those emissions, we really see that that's really what resonates across partisan lines. And when we push too quickly for all electrification, or to ban gas stoves, or to mandate heat pumps, those are huge expenses, and those huge expenses fall disproportionately on lower income communities. And that's really where you see a disconnect within the Democratic Party, with those lower income communities who oftentimes vote heavily Democratic, are basically saying, why are you pushing these policies that hurt me? Maybe there's some kind of rich liberal Democrats that appeals to, but you really have to think in a pragmatic way for folks who are lower income, to make sure that you're doing this in a fair way for them that's affordable, while also making sure that they've got that reliable power, so that when they need air conditioning, they need heat, it's coming on.
Well, thanks, Mike. We really appreciate you breaking this down for us, and we'll look forward to having you back soon. Next on Energy Matters, we're focusing on South Jersey with Christina Renna, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey. We'll discuss the needs and focus of the business community. Plus, we'll talk energy affordability with Cape May County Commissioner Melanie Collette. My next guest is Christina Renna, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Jersey. Christina, thanks so much for joining us today to talk about all things energy. First, tell me a little bit about South Jersey's business community and how the region differs from the northern part of the state.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette. And I can go on and on about this question for a very long time. I won't do that right now. I'll just say that, South Jersey, generally speaking, there's a lot of opportunities down in the southern portion of the state that folks don't realize. First and foremost, it's much more affordable to have a business down this way. It's more affordable to live. New Jersey is a high-cost state, and being in South Jersey, you definitely have more land to build, more area to grow your business, to expand, and certainly it is more affordable. But that being said, we have some unique challenges, specifically that I think folks that aren't from South Jersey, policymakers specifically, don't really understand the unique dynamics of the composition of the 7 or 8 counties that make up South Jersey, because every county is very different. Every county has different economic challenges and different economic opportunities. Atlantic County's challenges and opportunities are very different than Burlington County's, and Salem Counties are very different than Cape May County's. So it makes having cohesive policy for businesses to really thrive difficult, which means it's a much more like personalized and attention given to our business owners to make sure that they are really succeeding and thriving in a little bit of a challenging environment.
Well, your organization does a great job of representing them and helping them deal with those challenges. But speaking of, some of the bigger challenges, how do these high energy costs that we're experiencing right now fit into the larger set of pressures facing South Jersey businesses today?
such a great question. It's honestly the number one question that business owners are facing. And the answer is different depending on industry and size of business. But specifically, as we look at the size of a business, it is interesting because your smaller enterprises, your smaller businesses, whether it be your hair salon, your sub shop, whatever it is, they tend to want to be more energy efficient. They're seeing these energy costs rise and it hits them in the pocketbook much harder than it would a larger enterprise because they simply don't have potentially the cash flow. They're just smaller organizations. So it may not be as drastic of an increase as some larger organizations are seeing, but it hits them much harder. They have the flexibility and adaptability being small to embrace renewable energy resources or opportunities for energy efficiency, but they don't always have the cash to do so. So they want to help find ways to be more cost effective and more environmentally friendly as it relates to energy, but they really can't necessarily afford to do it. On the flip side, when it comes to larger businesses in South Jersey, they of course do have more resources, financial and otherwise, to be able to pay for increased costs. And those increases are going to be much larger than a small business because you're talking about many more employees, potentially multiple sites, and obviously just larger buildings and enterprises, all in this digital world we're living in. But sometimes larger businesses have a slower process as it relates to just the internal bureaucracy. Or, of course, larger enterprises are more regulated by state government and policymakers, which tends to slow down processes as well, making any ability to address energy challenges in an efficient way, sometimes a slower process and a more tedious process to make sure they're in compliance with government regulation.
Are you seeing any trade-offs that employers are having to make when their energy costs are rising?
Oh, absolutely. And especially those smaller businesses I was just referring to. When you look at a small business, you may need a new copy machine, and that copy machine is $1,000. So when your energy bill goes up and is tripled, you have to make a very fundamental choice between, something necessary to make your office run and keeping the lights on. I mean, it seems like minutia, but these are my team member needs a new laptop, but my electric bill just skyrocketed. And my electric bill skyrocketed, because of so many reasons that are not utility companies' faults. However, businesses, residents, they want to blame the utility companies because that's who's sending the check. But really, at the end of the day, it's not their fault at all. It's a supply and demand issue that we're faced with on the energy front.
100%. And now, how concerned are you that these rising energy costs that businesses are facing, combined with, more state mandates, higher taxes on businesses, that all these things could drive South Jersey businesses to relocate or scale back and potentially shifting jobs and investment out of South Jersey?
It's never not a fear, Jeanette. It's always a fear, especially here in South Jersey, where we're bordering Delaware that has no sales tax. We're bordering Pennsylvania, that in Governor Shapiro is doing some really smart things with his corporate business tax, lowering it down to 4.99%. Meanwhile, New Jersey's corporate business tax is the highest in the nation, especially for larger businesses. Perfect example of us losing out businesses are data centers. And there's a lot of kind of conversation and maybe controversy around the building of data centers in this energy conversation because data centers use so much energy. But the moral of the story is that when data centers are looking in this tri-state area, New Jersey is coming in last because it's not affordable. The taxation structure does not accommodate us. And they already know they're going to have energy challenges wherever they are because the energy challenges we're facing in New Jersey are nationwide energy issues. But you're going to want to go to a place that wants to have you and is willing to think creatively about policy solutions to bring that economic growth in a data center to their backyard. And just last week, we lost another one to Pennsylvania. And so it's happening consistently, and something that, especially here in South Jersey, with a friendlier environment in Pennsylvania and a friendlier environment in Delaware that borders us, we are constantly on the lookout for businesses leaving or new businesses looking at us, giving us a hard look, and then turning and going to another state.
Well, South Jersey definitely faces a lot of challenges for their businesses, and they're fortunate to have you and the Chamber of Commerce Southern New Jersey advocating for them. Thanks so much for joining us, Christina. We look forward to having you back again.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. I appreciate the opportunity.
Our next guest is Cape May County Commissioner Melanie Collette and policy analyst for CFACT. Commissioner, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. So one of the biggest issues around New Jersey right now is energy affordability and the fact that electric bills have recently gone up by a lot, by 20%, even more in some cases. And I'm sure you must be hearing about this from your constituents in Cape May.
Certainly, it's a big concern. 60% of our residents here in Cape May County are second home owners, retirees, that kind of thing, and it's very concerning when you're on a fixed income. And unfortunately, the BPU has just been kind of running roughshod with the regulations and the rate hikes, and they really do need to be reined in.
So in your opinion, do you feel that the state officials and the governor's office and the BPU, have they done enough to address this issue?
I feel like the legislators down in South Jersey have been doing a good job at calling the BP out on these things and trying to have them rein in these rate hikes, like in Legislative District 1 and Legislative District 2. I think Congressman Van Drew has also been doing a good job monitoring that situation and calling out how these rates need to be reduced and they need to be reined in. Unfortunately, we are not in the majority in Trenton, and that is highly problematic when it comes to reining these bureaucrats in. And here in South Jersey, they consider us all to be like wealthy beachfront owners down, with beachfront properties that are $1 million, when there's something called inland that we have, and just regular folk, regular working folk that live here that cannot really sustain these rate hikes.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about affordability in the economy, tourism dominates Cape May's economy, accounting for around $8 billion in spending each year, and that's a big number. What impact does these rising energy costs have on Cape May's tourism economy and small businesses?
It certainly has a huge impact on our small businesses, because that causes, those increase in rates causes small businesses to have to raise prices themselves, making Cape May County a little less affordable for people who love to come down here and enjoy the tourism and all that we have to offer, at our zoos and our wineries and our beaches. And it just makes things difficult. And if, these business owners decide that they're not going to raise rates, well, then they have to take more of a cut themselves. They're not going to be able to pay their employees as much. They're not going to be able to take as big of a profit. So it's problematic, and we would hate to have, businesses have to shut down or anything like that because they can't sustain a healthy profit margin.
Yeah, 100%. And we all know that Cape May has a beautiful coastline and beautiful shoreline, but many parts of Cape May are quite rural, and they have a higher energy burden, which means families spend a larger share of their income on utility bills. I know the governor and the BPU are giving residents a $100 rate credit, and low and moderate income families may get a little bit more, but does this really go far enough?
It doesn't go far enough. I mean, I think that what needs to be reined in is how they do their calculations on these rate hikes. And $100 hardly moves the needle when your bill every month is hundreds of dollars more. I just don't see how that is a reasonable solution. That's like you having, a $100,000 bill and somebody gives you $100 toward it. It really doesn't make that big of a difference.
100%. And I know you always talk about financial literacy. What would you say to families who are just struggling to make ends meet and now have to deal with this huge burden? They're on a fixed income and they have these skyrocketing energy bills on top of higher taxes coming out of Trenton. How are they supposed to deal with this?
Fortunately, here in Cape May County, we were able to lower our county taxes. But to your point, Trenton keeps raising taxes over and over again. One of the things that you want to do is first of all, don't panic. I know it's easy to panic when you see skyrocketing bills. Another thing that you can do is just make sure that you're tracking your expenses and how you're spending on your utility bills to try to kind of mitigate the damage. We actually do waste a lot of energy when it comes to just our everyday tasks. So I think that that kind of monitoring and being careful about how your monitoring is affecting your bill will go a long way towards saving money. You're just going to have to be a lot more judicious, unfortunately. And it's a sad thing to say.
Yeah, unfortunately, people are really going to have to deal with this, especially during the summer months. Well, we really appreciate your advice, and we look forward to having you back on the show. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
That does it for today. I'm Jeanette Hoffman. Thanks for watching.